My sister stole my groom. So I accidentally married New Orleans' most feared mafia boss. Sounds impossible, does it not? But some betrayals do not just break your heart. They push you through a door you were never meant to open. Harper Ellis came home carrying wedding favors. She was still worried about the caterer, the flowers, the guests. All the tiny pieces of a perfect life. Then she heard a breath from the living room. She turned the corner and found her fiancé pressed against her own sister beneath the wallpaper she had paid for. That night, Harper did not scream. She did not beg. She walked into a dark bar by the river. She met a man with blood on his hands and power in his name. Before Harper Ellis ever heard Dominic Vale's name whispered like a warning, she was just a woman standing in a grocery store parking lot. It was before the rain and the river warehouse and the signature that changed her life. She stood with 2 boxes of wedding favors digging into her hip. Sweat was sliding down the back of her neck. New Orleans in August did not forgive anybody. The heat rose from the pavement in thick waves. It clung to skin, curled hair, softened makeup. It made every breath taste faintly of salt, gasoline, and magnolia rot. Harper stood beside her aging white sedan. She tried to shift the boxes higher against her ribs without dropping her purse, her phone, or the iced coffee she had forgotten to drink. Inside the boxes were 300 tiny jars of local honey. Each jar had a cream ribbon tied around its neck. Each ribbon had a little card attached with gold lettering. Harper and Carter, September 14th. Sweet beginnings. Harper stared at the words until they blurred. Her phone buzzed again. She balanced one box against the side mirror and checked the screen. It was the caterer again. She let it ring until it stopped, then watched a voicemail appear. Beneath it, 3 unread texts waited from the florist, one from the bakery and another from her mother. Her mother asked if she reminded Brooke about her final dress fitting. She said Brooke sounded upset earlier. Harper closed her eyes. Of course Brooke was upset. Brooke was always upset when the world stopped arranging itself around her. Harper could already picture her younger sister stretched across some velvet chair at the bridal boutique, her blonde hair spilling over one shoulder, eyes wet, voice trembling just enough to make strangers protective. Brooke would say, "Nobody understands how hard this is for me." This was Brooke's gift. She could stand in the middle of somebody else's storm and somehow convince everyone she was the one getting rained on. Harper loved her sister. That was the problem. Love made excuses long after common sense had packed a bag and left. She slid the phone into her purse and lifted the second box again. The cardboard edge bit into her forearm. A woman in yoga pants walked past with a toddler on her hip and gave Harper a sympathetic smile. The woman asked if it was wedding stuff. Harper forced a laugh and asked if it was that obvious. The woman nodded toward the ribbons. She said they were beautiful and that Harper must be excited. Excited. The word landed strangely. Harper was supposed to be excited. She had repeated it often enough that it should have become true by now. She was marrying Carter Brooks. He was the man with the clean apartment, the safe job, the polite parents. He had a reliable credit score and the kind of smile that made older women say he seemed dependable. Dependable had sounded romantic at 26. At 29, it sounded like a chair that did not wobble. Harper told herself that was enough. Carter was good on paper. He remembered oil changes. He had a retirement account. He knew which fork to use at a formal dinner. He never raised his voice. He never scared her. He never made wild promises or impossible demands. He also never planned anything, unless Harper handed him a calendar invite. The wedding had become her second full-time job. Caterer, florist, photographer, final head count, seating chart, playlist, approval of hotel blocks, guest shuttle schedule, rehearsal dinner menu. Thank you gifts for the bridal party. Carter had signed checks when she placed them in front of him. He kissed her forehead and told her she was amazing. He meant it as praise. Lately, it felt like permission to keep carrying everything alone. Harper managed to get both boxes into her arms and nudged the car door shut with her hip. The parking lot shimmered. Somewhere nearby, a cicada screamed from a live oak as if it had personally been betrayed by the weather. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Carter. He texted that it was a crazy day at the office. His partner was breathing down his neck. He said he loved her and would see her tonight. Harper stared at the text. She typed back that he forgot the bakery deposit. Then she deleted it. She typed that they needed to talk about the final catering payment. She deleted that too. Finally, she wrote that she loved him too. She hit send before she could change her mind. The drive home took 24 minutes, though it should have taken 12. Traffic crawled past shotgun houses painted turquoise, coral, and sun faded yellow. Tourists wandered the sidewalks with paper cups and pink cheeks. A brass band played somewhere near a corner bar. The notes bent through the thick air like smoke. Harper kept one hand on the wheel and one on the air conditioning vent. It pushed out air that was more hopeful than cold. By the time she reached the garden district, the sky had turned the color of bruised peach. The grand old houses sat behind iron fences shaded by ancient oaks and dripping moss. Harper and Carter did not live in one of those houses. They lived in a modest brick apartment building. It was wedged between a renovated double-gallery home and a dentist's office with peeling shutters. It was not glamorous, but Harper had made it beautiful. She had painted the kitchen cabinets herself over 3 weekends while Carter complained about the smell. She had found the antique mirror above the entry table at a flea market. She had hunted for the brass lamp in the living room for 6 months. She had chosen the magnolia wallpaper for the accent wall. Carter had just shrugged and said whatever makes her happy. At the time it had sounded generous. Now walking up the stairs with wedding favors cutting into her palms, Harper wondered when she had mistaken indifference for kindness. The hallway smelled like old carpet floor polish and someone's garlic dinner. Mrs. Alvarez from apartment 2A had left a folded newspaper outside her door. The elevator was broken again. So Harper climbed to the 3rd floor one careful step at a time. Her shoulders ached. Her blouse stuck to her back. A strand of hair clung to her lip gloss. She reached apartment 3B and rested one box against the wall while she searched for her keys. The little silver keychain Carter had bought her on their first trip together swung from the ring. It was a tiny engraved heart, H and C forever. Harper looked at it for half a second too long. Then she unlocked the door. The apartment was too quiet. That was her first thought. Not silent. Silence had weight. Silence announced itself. This was something else, a held breath, a pause in the shape of a room. Harper stepped inside and pushed the door shut with her heel. She called out for Carter. There was no answer. She frowned and set her keys in the ceramic bowl on the entry table. The small clatter sounded sharp in the stillness. The air conditioning hummed weakly from the hallway vent, fighting a losing war against the heat. A half-folded dish towel lay on the kitchen counter. Carter's brown leather work shoes sat crooked near the sofa. He was home. Harper looked toward the bedroom. She called out that she had the favors and that the caterer called again. Still nothing. She shifted the boxes higher and walked into the kitchen. His laptop bag was on one of the bar stools. His tie was draped over the back of a chair. A glass of water sat sweating on the counter. The ice was melted to thin slivers. Harper's stomach tightened. Carter was not a spontaneous man. He had habits. He put his shoes beside the closet. He hung his tie on the bedroom door. He answered when she called him, even if only to say he was busy. Then she heard it, a rustle from the living room. Soft fabric against plaster. A breath caught too late. Harper stopped. The boxes seemed to grow heavier in her arms. She said his name again. There was movement now. Too quick, too clumsy. A small sound followed, high and wet. Not quite a gasp. Harper knew that sound. Not because she had heard it from Brooke before, but because the body understands certain things before the mind agrees to look at them. She moved toward the living room slowly. The late afternoon light slanted through the blinds. It striped the hardwood floor in golden shadow. Dust floated in the beams. The magnolia wallpaper glowed softly on the accent wall. Cream blossoms curled around green leaves, delicate and expensive, chosen by Harper after weeks of comparing samples. Carter was pressed against it. So was Brooke. His shirt hung open. His belt was unbuckled. One hand was still tangled in Brooke's hair. Brooke's back was against the wall Harper had paid for. Her lips were swollen. Her eyes were wide, but not shocked, not really. Harper saw the calculation arrive first, then the tears. The room narrowed around the three of them. Harper's ears filled with a low, rushing sound. For one suspended second, her mind focused on the wrong detail. Carter's belt buckle. It was scratched near the edge. She had bought that belt for his 31st birthday. He had complained that his old one looked cheap in front of clients. She had wrapped it in navy paper. He had kissed her cheek and told her she was thoughtful. Thoughtful. Yes, Harper had always been thoughtful. She remembered people's allergies. She mailed birthday cards early. She kept extra phone chargers in her purse. She bought her sister a bridesmaid dress she could not afford. Brooke had cried in the fitting room and said the cheaper fabric made her feel ugly. Harper thought of everyone, and here they were, thinking of themselves. Carter said her name. His voice cracked. He jumped back from Brooke so quickly his shoulder hit the wall. One of the magnolia blossoms wrinkled beneath him. Brooke pulled the strap of her camisole back onto her shoulder. Harper recognized it. Black silk, thin lace edge. It was hers. Brooke had borrowed Harper's clothes since they were teenagers, always without asking. A sweater before a school dance, a pair of earrings before a date. Harper's red coat one Christmas Eve, returned with a wine stain and an apology delivered with wet eyes. Brooke would always say she did not mean it. She always did not mean it. The box of honey jars trembled in Harper's arms. Glass clinked softly inside. Carter took one step forward, hands raised like she was a frightened animal. He begged her to listen to him. He said it was not what it looked like. Harper looked at his open shirt, then at Brooke's bare legs. She looked at the smeared lipstick near Carter's mouth. She asked what it looked like. Her voice was thin, calm, almost polite. That frightened Carter more than screaming would have. He swallowed hard and said it just happened. Brooke made a wounded little noise. She whispered that it was her fault. Harper turned her head. Brooke's lower lip trembled perfectly. Her mascara had smudged beneath one eye in a way that made her look fragile instead of guilty. Of course it had. Brooke had always known how to fall apart attractively. Brooke said she came over because she was panicking about the wedding. She said she felt like she was losing Harper, and Carter was just trying to comfort her. Harper blinked. There it was. The old magic trick. Brooke had been found with her mouth on Harper's fiancé, and somehow Harper was being asked to understand how lonely that must have felt for Brooke. Carter nodded too quickly. He said that was all it was. He said she was upset. They were talking, and things got emotional. Harper repeated the word emotional. Carter said yes, relief flickering across his face. He thought she was following him back to safety. He said it was stupid and did not mean anything. Harper walked to the coffee table. Neither of them moved. She set the boxes of honey jars down carefully. Her fingers had gone numb, but she still arranged the boxes so they did not tilt. One ribbon had come loose. She smoothed it with her thumb. Sweet beginnings. The words stared up at her from 300 tiny lies. Harper told Carter the caterer needed another $1,200. Carter stared at her in confusion. He asked about the final deposit. Harper said they called 4 times because he forgot to send it. Carter told her this was not about the caterer. Harper softly agreed that it was not. The room pulsed with heat. Outside, a car passed with bass rattling its windows. Somewhere upstairs, a child laughed. Life continued with an insulting casualness. Carter's eyes filled with panic. He called her baby and begged her. He reminded her they were 6 weeks from the wedding and said they could fix this. Harper looked at him. He was handsome in the way men like Carter were handsome. Clean jaw, soft brown hair, good teeth. A face that looked trustworthy in photographs. His clients probably loved him. Waiters probably assumed he tipped well. Her mother had called him a real catch the first time Harper brought him to dinner. Now he stood in their living room with his belt undone, asking if they could fix the thing he had chosen to break. She asked him who he meant by we. Carter flinched. He admitted he messed up. Harper told him he just got caught. Brooke stepped forward and begged Harper not to punish him because of her. That almost made Harper laugh. It came out as a breath. She told Brooke to stop auditioning for the role of victim for once in her life. Brooke's face changed only for a second. The softness slipped. Something ugly flashed beneath it. Envy, maybe, or anger, or the pure irritation of a person whose tears had failed to work on schedule. Then the tears returned. Brooke whispered that Harper did not know what it felt like. She said Harper had everything. The job, the apartment, Carter, the wedding. She said everybody always thought Harper was so perfect. Harper stared at her. Perfect. The word landed like a slap. She remembered staying up until 2 in the morning, helping Brooke rewrite college essays Brooke had forgotten to start. She remembered covering for her when she missed their father's hospital appointment, because she had gone to a music festival. She remembered giving Brooke money for rent and listening to their mother explain that Brooke was sensitive, that Brooke needed patience, that Harper was stronger. Stronger had never meant protected, it had meant available for damage. Harper told Brooke she wanted him because he was hers. Brooke's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Carter looked between them, desperate now. He said that was not fair. Harper turned to him. The look must have been something sharp, because he stepped back. She told him not to defend Brooke while his shirt was open. His face reddened. He fumbled with the buttons, hands shaking. He told Harper he loved her. Harper almost wished he had not. Some words spoken too late do not comfort. They contaminate. She told him no. She said he loved being loved by her. His eyes shone. He tried to argue. Harper listed the things he actually loved. He loved that she made appointments. He loved that she remembered his mother's birthday. He loved that she knew which clients hated Chardonnay and which ones needed gluten-free options. He loved that she built a life around him so neatly he never had to wonder who was holding the walls up. Carter's jaw tightened. He said that was not true. Harper looked around the apartment, the lamp she found, the curtains she steamed, the rug she cleaned after Carter spilled red wine during the Saints game, the framed engagement photo Brooke had taken in City Park, telling Harper to turn her chin because the first angle made her look tired. Every object in the room had Harper's fingerprints on it. Somehow she had been the disposable one. Carter came closer and asked for one chance to explain. He reached for her wrist. Harper did not move away. She looked down at his hand. The room became very still. She told him if he touched her, she would break every finger he used to count other people's money. Carter froze. Brooke made a small sound. Harper looked at the engagement ring on her finger. The diamond was modest, tasteful, practical. Carter had chosen it with his mother. Harper had told herself she liked it because it was sensible. She twisted it once, twice, then pulled it free. Her skin beneath it was pale. The absence looked indecent. Carter watched the ring in her hand as if it were a pulse monitor going flat. He whispered for her not to do it. Harper walked to the coffee table and placed it beside the honey jars. No drama, no throw, no final flourish. Just the ring sitting quietly among wedding favors. It looked smaller than it had ever looked on her hand. She told them to keep the apartment, keep the wallpaper, and keep each other. Carter's face crumpled. Brooke started crying harder now, loud enough for neighbors if the walls were thin. She sobbed and reminded Harper she was her sister. Harper paused at the entryway. For one dangerous second, the old instinct rose in her. Comfort Brooke. Calm Carter. Fix the room. Collect the broken pieces before someone stepped on them. Her fingers twitched. Then she picked up her purse. She told Brooke she was just the woman wearing her camisole. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Carter followed her into the hallway and begged her to wait. The air was stale and warm. Mrs. Alvarez's newspaper still sat outside apartment 2A. The world looked exactly as it had 10 minutes ago, which felt impossible. Harper kept walking. Carter's bare feet slapped against the floor behind her. He told her she could not just leave. She pressed the elevator button. Nothing happened. Of course, broken. She turned toward the stairs. Carter grabbed the doorframe, but did not cross into the hall. Maybe because he was half-dressed. Maybe because he finally understood she had meant what she said about his fingers. He asked where she was going. Harper looked back at him. His shirt was still crooked. His eyes were red. Behind him, Brooke hovered in the apartment doorway, wrapped in Harper's silk like a stolen flag. Harper said she did not know. That was the first honest thing she had said all day. She walked down the stairs. One flight, then another. By the time she reached the lobby, her legs felt strangely light. It was as if the rest of her body had not caught up with the fact that something vital had been cut loose. Outside, the heat hit her full in the face. Evening had settled over the garden district in layers of purple and gold. Porch lights glowed behind wrought iron fences. A dog barked somewhere down the block. The smell of wet leaves, hot pavement, and distant fried food drifted through the thick air. Harper stood on the sidewalk and realized she had nowhere to go. Her purse held her wallet, her phone, a lipstick, 3 receipts, and a packet of emergency painkillers. Her laptop was still inside. Her clothes were still inside. Her toothbrush, passport, work notes, favorite mug, grandmother's necklace. All of it remained in the apartment with Carter and Brooke. She almost turned back. Not because she wanted him, but because her life was in there. Then her phone began vibrating. Carter. She rejected the call. It rang again. Brooke. Rejected. Then her mother. Harper stared at the screen until the call stopped. A text appeared. Her mother said Carter had just called her crying, and that Brooke was hysterical. She begged Harper not to do anything dramatic before they talked. Harper read it once, then again. Please do not do anything dramatic. She looked up at the apartment window. Behind the glass, 2 silhouettes moved through the warm light. Carter and Brooke together in the space Harper had built. Something inside her went quiet. Not healed, not calm. Quiet like a house after the power goes out. Her mother texted again, saying Brooke gets overwhelmed and asking Harper to call her. Harper powered off the phone. A cab rolled slowly past. Its yellow paint was dulled by city grime. Harper lifted her hand before she could think better of it. The cab stopped at the curb. The driver leaned across and pushed open the back door. He asked where to. Harper slid inside. The vinyl seat stuck to the backs of her thighs. The cab smelled like old cigarettes, spearmint gum, and rain trapped in carpet. She looked out the window at the apartment building. For 3 years she had climbed those stairs. She had carried groceries, dry cleaning, work stress, family emergencies. She had carried Carter's moods, Brooke's disasters, and every small repair nobody else noticed. Now she carried nothing. The emptiness was terrifying. The driver called her ma'am and asked where he was taking her. Harper opened her mouth, but no address came. Her best friend was in Atlanta. Her office was closed. Her mother would ask what Harper had done to upset Brooke. A hotel would require decisions she could not make yet. She thought of the wedding venue. The white chairs, the string quartet, the cake tasting where Carter had joked that Harper was too serious about frosting. She thought of 300 guests checking invitations stuck to refrigerators, waiting to witness the happiest day of her life. Her laugh came out broken. She told him to just drive, away from there. The driver studied her in the mirror for 1 second, then pulled into traffic. New Orleans slid past in fragments. Oak trees, iron balconies, neon signs. A man playing trumpet outside a corner store. Couples laughing under string lights. A bride-to-be in another life might have found it beautiful. Harper sat in the back seat and pressed her bare ring finger into her palm until it hurt. The city changed around her. The polished streets of the Garden District gave way to narrower roads, cracked sidewalks, low buildings with peeling paint, and bars with no names bright enough for tourists. The sky darkened. A thin line of thunder rolled over the river. Rain threatened but did not fall. The driver glanced back and asked if she was all right. Harper almost said yes. The word had lived in her mouth for years. Yes, I can handle it. Yes, I will pay the deposit. Yes, Brooke can borrow it. Yes, Carter forgot, but it is Mom, I understand. She was so tired of yes. She told the driver no. He nodded once, like that was a complete answer. A few minutes later, he pulled to the curb outside a squat brick building. It had a black painted door and a flickering sign shaped like a pelican, the Black Pelican. The windows were dark. Music leaked through the walls, low and bluesy. Not a place for bachelorette parties. Not a place for engagement photos. Not a place anyone would look for Harper Ellis. Perfect. The meter clicked. Harper handed the driver cash without counting it. He looked at the bills and said she gave him too much. She told him to keep it. He hesitated, then told her to take care of herself. Harper stepped onto the curb. The humid air wrapped around her again. Somewhere nearby, the Mississippi moved unseen through the dark. It carried barges, secrets, and things that would never come back to shore. She stood outside the bar for a moment, hand on the door. Her reflection flickered in the small square of glass. Perfect hair beginning to fall, lipstick faded, blouse wrinkled, one finger bare. A woman between lives. Then Harper pushed open the door and walked into the dark. The door closed behind Harper with a tired wooden groan. The noise of the city disappeared as if someone had dropped a curtain over it. Inside the Black Pelican, The air was cool, stale, and heavy. It had the kind of silence that belonged to people who had stopped explaining themselves years ago. A blues guitar moaned from a jukebox in the corner. The floorboards looked old enough to remember every bad decision ever made on them. The bar itself was a long slab of dark wood, scarred by rings from glasses, cigarette burns, and knife marks nobody had bothered to sand away. Harper stood near the entrance for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. Nobody turned to look at her for more than a second. That was the first kindness the night had offered. At a round table near the back, 2 men played cards without speaking. A woman in a red blouse stared into a glass of gin like it owed her money. Behind the bar, a broad man with a gray beard polished a tumbler with a towel that had given up on being white. Harper walked to the far end of the bar and sat down. Her knees felt loose. Her body had carried her this far, but now that she was still, the shock began to arrive in pieces. Carter's open shirt, Brooke's mouth, the magnolia wallpaper wrinkled beneath his shoulder, her mother's text asking her not to do anything dramatic. Harper almost laughed again, but the sound got stuck somewhere behind her ribs. The bartender approached her and asked what she wanted. His voice was low and rough, like sandpaper over gravel. Harper ordered bourbon. He waited. She looked up at him and told him to leave the bottle. His eyes flicked to her bare ring finger, then to the faint red mark where the ring had been. If he had an opinion, he kept it buried. He set down a glass and a bottle with a plain black label. Harper poured too much. She drank it anyway. The bourbon hit her throat like fire and settled in her empty stomach like a stone wrapped in heat. She shut her eyes, swallowed the burn, and poured again. The second drink went down easier. That frightened her less than it should have. On the bar in front of her, a drop of condensation slid from the glass and traced a crooked line across the wood. Harper watched it move until her vision blurred. The phone in her purse was off, but she could feel it anyway. A dead weight full of voices that wanted something from her. Carter begging. Brooke crying. Her mother smoothing the edges off betrayal until Harper could be blamed for being sharp. She pressed her fingers against her bare ring finger. The skin there still felt indented. 3 years with Carter had left a mark so pale and small that only Harper could see it. A voice beside her asked if the seat was taken. Harper did not look up. She said yes. The stool scraped anyway. The man said no, it is not. He sat down like he owned the decision, and the room had already agreed. Harper turned slowly. She was ready to empty every ugly word in her mouth onto whatever stranger thought a woman drinking alone was an invitation. Then she saw him. He did not belong in the Black Pelican. Not because he was too clean. There were plenty of clean men in dirty places. It was the way the dirt seemed unwilling to touch him. He wore a black suit that fit like it had been cut directly on his body. The jacket was open. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, showing a glimpse of tanned skin and the edge of a thin gold chain. His dark hair was combed back, though a few strands had come loose near his temple. There was a faint shadow along his jaw. It was not careless but deliberate, as if even his exhaustion had been sharpened. His face was not handsome in a safe way. It was too hard for that. A strong nose that looked like it had once been broken. A mouth that seemed more used to giving orders than comfort. Eyes so dark they swallowed the bar light and gave nothing back. The bartender appeared before the man even raised a hand. That was the second thing Harper noticed. The first was the way the room changed when he sat down. Not loudly. No one gasped. No one ran. But shoulders tightened. Card players stopped moving their hands. The woman in red looked into her gin a little harder. Even the jukebox seemed quieter. The bartender reached beneath the counter and brought out a different bottle. Clear glass, amber liquid, no label Harper could see. He poured 2 fingers into a clean glass and set it before the man. No bill, no question. The man did not thank him. The bartender moved away. Harper stared at the man. She asked if he was famous or dangerous. The man lifted his glass and took a slow sip. He said in New Orleans those are usually the same thing. His voice was low, scraped with smoke and sleepless nights. It moved through the space between them like something with weight. Harper should have turned away. Instead, the bourbon made her honest. She told him he was overdressed for a bar that smelled like bleach and regret. His gaze shifted to her just once. It started at her face, paused at her bare finger. took in the wrinkled blouse, and the wedding favor ribbon still stuck to her sleeve. He pointed out she was drinking house bourbon, like water. He said they all have their costumes. Harper looked down and found the tiny cream ribbon clinging to her cuff. Sweet Beginnings was printed in gold. She ripped it off and dropped it into the ashtray. The man watched the movement. He said it looked like a bad night. Harper let out a small, humorless breath. She told him her fiancé had her sister against their living room wall 6 weeks before the wedding. He did not flinch. He did not soften his face. He did not offer the usual useless apology. Harper was grateful. He only said it was messy. She laughed before she could stop herself. That was it. Messy. She told him he did not look like he came there for comfort. Harper turned on the stool until she faced him more fully. She asked what she looked like she came there for. His eyes moved over her face. Not hungrily, but carefully, like he was reading damage in a language he understood too well. He told her she came for a match. The words slid under her skin. Harper picked up her glass. She sarcastically congratulated him for finding a woman with 300 guests, a non-refundable venue, a 3-tier cake, and no groom. The man swirled the liquid in his glass. He told her not to cancel. Harper blinked. She asked what he meant. He repeated, "Do not cancel the wedding." She stared at him. She said he missed the part where her groom was busy committing emotional arson with her sister. He said he heard her. Harper asked what exactly he was suggesting. He looked at her fully then. The force of that attention made her fingers tighten around the glass. He told her to change the groom. For half a second, Harper thought she had misheard him. Then she laughed. It came out louder than she intended, rough around the edges, close to breaking. She said sure. She would just step outside and ask the first man with a pulse if he wanted to ruin her mother's seating chart. The man did not smile. He said that depends how badly she wanted to ruin his life back. Harper's laughter faded. The air between them sharpened. He took another drink. Harper studied his hands. Large hands, long fingers, scarred knuckles. A heavy signet ring on his right hand. Black stone set in gold, not flashy. Old, serious. The kind of ring that did not decorate power but confirmed it. She asked his name. His eyes stayed on the mirror behind the bar. He said Dominic. Just Dominic for tonight. Harper turned back to her drink and introduced herself. He said he knew. She froze. The room seemed to tilt. Slowly, she looked at him again. She asked how. Dominic set his glass down. He told her she paid with a card at the cab stand outside. The driver came in for change before she did. He had said a bride named Harper looked like she had been hit by a truck, but tipped like a senator. Harper stared at him. She said that was either impressive or deeply unsettling. Dominic replied that most useful things are both. She should have been alarmed. She was alarmed. But the night had already become so unreal that fear arrived late, dressed in someone else's coat. Harper poured another drink, then thought better of it and set the bottle down. Dominic noticed and said it was a good choice. Harper said she did not ask for approval. He said she asked for a match, then asked for bourbon. She just got both without using the same words. Harper hated that he was right. The jukebox clicked, changed songs, then settled into something slower. Rain began tapping against the windows, light at first, then steadier. The sound filled the pauses between them. Harper looked at Dominic's untouched expression, his expensive suit, the way the bartender refused to meet his eyes for too long. She asked what he was coping with. He looked amused then, though barely. He asked who said he was coping. Harper said people who are not coping do not drink alone in places like this. He reminded her he was not alone. Harper tilted her head and said sitting beside a drunk woman with wedding drama did not count. He said it might. There was something in the way he said it that made Harper's pulse change. Not romance. Not yet. Something darker and more dangerous than that. Recognition, maybe. Two strangers sitting at the edge of their own disasters, pretending the ground was still solid. Before Harper could answer, the front door slammed open. The sound cracked through the bar like a gunshot. Every head turned except Dominic's. 3 men stepped inside. They brought the rain with them. Water shone on black jackets and cheap boots. The man in front was thick through the shoulders with a shaved head, a crooked nose, and a smile that belonged in an alley. His right hand stayed tucked inside his coat. The bartender disappeared through the back without a word. Harper's throat went dry. Dominic did not move, but something in him changed. His shoulders loosened instead of tightening. His breathing slowed. His right hand drifted from the bar and rested near the inside of his jacket. The man at the door smiled wider and said Dominic Vale's name. Harper felt the name hit the room before it hit her memory. Vale. She had seen it in headlines. Vale Shipping Group wins port expansion contract. Federal inquiry stalls after witness recants. Local businessman Dominic Vale declines comment. Whispers from Carter's accounting friends after too much wine. Men who owned docks, judges, Union Streets. Men whose names were spoken lower after midnight. Dominic Vale. The man beside her sighed. It was not fear, it was irritation. He called the man Rocco and told him he was interrupting his drink. Rocco took 2 steps forward. He said Vincent Caruso wanted a word. Dominic told him to tell Vincent to make an appointment. Rocco's smile vanished. He said now. Dominic finally turned on the stool slowly. The room held its breath. Harper did too. Dominic's voice stayed calm. He said if Vincent sent him into his city with 2 boys and a discount pistol, he must be getting sentimental in his old age. Rocco's face reddened. The 2 men behind him spread out. Harper felt the danger before she understood it. A shift of weight, a hand moving toward a waistband, the card players sliding beneath their table without a sound. She looked at Dominic. He looked almost bored. That terrified her more than panic would have. Rocco pulled the gun. Harper's body locked. There was no scream in her, no movement, no thought complete enough to save her. Dominic moved first. He did not stand. He twisted from the stool with terrible grace. One hand drew a gun from inside his jacket as if it had been waiting there all night. The shot was so loud Harper felt it in her teeth. Rocco screamed. His gun clattered across the floor. Blood spread across his shoulder. The second man reached for his waistband. Dominic fired again. Glass exploded behind the bar. Harper jerked back her elbow, striking the bottle. Bourbon spilled across the counter, sharp and sour. Dominic barked at her to get down. His hand closed over the back of her neck and shoved. Harper hit the floor hard behind the bar. Pain flashed through her hip. Her palms landed in sticky liquor and broken glass. The world became sound. Gunfire, wood splintering, men shouting. A bottle burst above her, raining whiskey and glass over her hair. Harper curled into herself. One hand was over her head, the other pressed to her mouth to keep from making noise. She could smell alcohol, smoke, old dust, and something metallic underneath. Blood. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might crack her ribs. She saw Carter's face in her mind, ridiculous and sudden. Carter, who got nervous driving in heavy rain. Carter, who called customer service 3 times to dispute a $40 fee. Carter, who had been the safe choice. Safe had lasted until the living room. Now bullets were tearing through a dive bar because a stranger had decided to sit beside her. The shooting ended as suddenly as it began. For a moment, Harper could hear only the ringing in her ears, then a groan from the front of the bar, rain against the windows, the jukebox still playing soft and obscene. A shadow fell across her. Dominic crouched beside her. His gun was still in his hand. His suit jacket was dusted with plaster. A thin red line marked his cheek where glass had cut him. Otherwise, he looked untouched. He asked if she was hit. Harper stared at him, confused. She looked down at herself, expecting to find blood. Her hands trembled as she touched her arms, ribs, stomach. She told him she was good. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her to her feet. Her knees nearly buckled. Rocco and the 2 men lay near the entrance. They were alive, moving, groaning, leaking blood onto the floorboards. One clutched his leg, another held his arm. Rocco was cursing in a language Harper did not understand. Harper's stomach lurched. She pointed out that he shot them. He calmly replied they would live. She repeated that he shot 3 men. Dominic reminded her they shot first. Harper was in disbelief. She said he shot 3 men in a bar. Dominic looked at her and told her to focus. The sound of sirens began in the distance, faint, growing. Dominic tucked his gun away and took her elbow. He said they were leaving. She tried to pull back. She said no, she was calling the police. His grip tightened. Not enough to hurt, just enough to make reality clear. He said the police already knew this bar. By the time they arrived, nobody there would remember seeing anything. Harper argued that Caruso's men saw her face and heard her name. Dominic's eyes cut toward the ashtray. The little wedding ribbon lay there. Gold letters turned upward. Harper. Her stomach dropped. Dominic moved toward the back hall, pulling her with him. He told her to walk. She said she did not even know him. He replied she knew enough. She said she knew he was dangerous. He said that was why she was still breathing. They pushed through a narrow hallway that smelled like mop water and old beer. Dominic opened a back door into an alley slick with rain. The night hit Harper like a slap. Warm water soaked her hair, ran down her neck, washed bourbon from her hands. The alley was narrow, hemmed in by brick walls and overflowing trash bins. A flickering security light buzzed overhead. Dominic moved fast. Harper stumbled behind him. At the end of the alley sat a black SUV with tinted windows, its engine already running. A man in the driver's seat stepped out as they approached, but Dominic snapped his fingers and ordered him to the passenger side. The man obeyed without a word, sliding into the back. Dominic opened the front passenger door and looked at Harper. He told her to get in. She said no. He leaned closer. Sirens grew louder. He said her name sharply. It was not gentle. It was precise, like he was placing it in her hands and asking her not to drop it. He told her those men belonged to Vincent Caruso. They came for him and found her. If he left her there, they would decide she mattered. If they decided she mattered, they would take her apart until he answered. Rain ran down Harper's face. She wanted to tell him he was insane. She wanted to wake up in the cab. She wanted the worst part of her night to be Carter and Brooke and the magnolia wallpaper. Instead, she climbed into the SUV. Dominic shut the door and rounded the hood. A second later, he was behind the wheel. The SUV tore out of the alley hard enough to throw Harper against the seat. Dominic drove one-handed, calm, cutting through side streets as if the city opened for him. Harper fumbled with the seatbelt. Her fingers would not work. Dominic reached over without looking and clicked it into place. The gesture was quick, practical. It made her want to cry. She did not. She asked who he was. Dominic took a sharp turn and said his name. She said she knew the name now, but that was not what she asked. His gaze stayed on the wet road. He said he ran a shipping company. Harper pointed out he just shot 3 people over a shipping dispute. Dominic smoothly replied that ports are emotional places. She told him not to do that. He glanced at her, confused. She told him not to talk like she was stupid just because she was scared. For the first time, his expression changed. Not much. Enough. He conceded it was fair. The SUV sped past shuttered storefronts and puddles glowing with red traffic lights. Dominic reached into his jacket, pulled out a phone, and dropped it into Harper's lap. He told her to call Miles. She stared at the screen and asked who Miles was. Dominic said it was his attorney. Harper asked why she was calling his attorney. He said because he was driving. Harper said that was not an answer. Dominic exhaled through his nose. He told her to tell Miles to meet them at the river warehouse. She needed to tell him to bring the trust documents, the emergency filing packet, and the judge's private number. Harper stared at him in disbelief. The judge's private number. She asked what kind of attorney had a judge's private number. Dominic simply said the useful kind. Harper picked up the phone with shaking fingers. The contact list showed only first names. Miles, Enzo, Sophia, priest, doctor, cleaner. Her thumb hovered over Miles. She told Dominic she was supposed to be choosing cake flavors tonight. His hands tightened on the wheel. For 1 second, the hard line of his mouth softened into something almost human. He said he knew. Harper said no, he did not. The words broke out of her before she could stop them. She told him he did not know what it felt like to walk into his own home and realize everybody he trusted thought he was too blind to notice the knife. He did not know what it felt like to be humiliated by people who still expected him to manage their feelings afterward. Dominic was quiet. Then he said she would be surprised what he knew about knives. Harper looked at him. Rain slid across the windshield, bending the city lights into streaks of gold and red. Dominic asked her to call Miles, adding a please. That startled her more than the gun had. She pressed the contact. A man answered on the first ring, breathless, saying Dominic's name. Harper swallowed. She said, "No, this is Harper." Silence. Then, very carefully, the man asked where Mr. Vale was driving. Another pause. He muttered, "Oh, God." Harper said he told them to meet at the river warehouse. She listed the trust documents, the emergency filing packet, and the judge's private number. Something crashed on the other end. Miles cursed softly. He asked if she said trust documents. Harper said yes. Miles asked who she was again. Harper looked at Dominic. He did not look back. Outside, the road curved toward the river. The city thinned into warehouses, chain-link fences, loading yards, and sleeping cranes. Harper pressed the phone tighter to her ear. She told Miles she was the woman who sat on the wrong bar stool. Miles made a strangled sound. Dominic's mouth curved for half a second. Ahead, beyond the rain-streaked windshield, a warehouse rose near the Mississippi, huge and dark against the bruised night sky. One light burned above a side entrance, swinging in the wind like it had been waiting for them. Dominic slowed at the gate. Harper looked down at her bare ring finger. For the first time all night, it did not feel empty. It felt like a space something dangerous was about to fill. The warehouse door rolled open with a metallic shriek, and the river wind rushed inside, carrying rain, diesel, and the low, muddy breath of the Mississippi. Harper stepped out of the SUV on shaking legs. The place looked abandoned from the outside, just another rusted shell on the edge of the port, but inside it was alive in the shadows. Men moved near stacked crates. Their voices stayed low. Their hands stayed close to their coats. A forklift sat idle beneath a broken skylight. Its yellow paint was dulled by years of dust and river air. One bare bulb swung above a steel desk in the center of the room. A man waited beside it, clutching a leather briefcase to his chest. He was short, balding, and sweating through a wrinkled gray suit despite the rain-cooled air. His glasses had slipped down his nose. When he saw Dominic, he hurried forward, then stopped when his eyes landed on Harper. He whispered, "Oh God." Dominic shut the SUV door and greeted Miles. The lawyer swallowed and pointed out he brought a civilian. Harper laughed once. It came out thin and strange. She said that was one word for it. Dominic walked past him toward the desk and asked for the documents. Miles looked from Dominic to Harper, then back again. He said he had them, but he needed to understand what Dominic was doing. Dominic asked if he understood enough. Miles firmly said he absolutely did not. He lowered his voice, but panic sharpened every syllable. He said the Caruso family made a move tonight. Rocco was not some drunk with a gun. He was a message. If Vincent knew the transfer window was open, he would challenge every port asset by morning. The board would freeze. The bank would stall. Federal monitors would sniff around. Miles said they needed a spouse yesterday. Harper stared at them and repeated the word spouse. Miles closed his eyes like he wished she had not heard that part. Dominic turned to her. He explained the Vale Trust controls warehouses, shipping routes, port contracts, and several companies that look cleaner on paper than they are in practice. His father wrote a clause into the transfer. Full control passes to him only if he is legally married at the time the estate is activated. Harper looked at the wet concrete beneath her shoes. She asked why he would do that. Dominic's jaw tightened. He said because even dead men enjoy control. Miles opened the briefcase with trembling fingers and spread papers across the desk. Thick legal stock, blue tabs, stamped seals, a marriage license, a transfer packet. A stack of forms that looked too official for a warehouse that smelled like oil and gunpowder. Harper's skin prickled. She had signed vendor contracts, marketing agreements, apartment leases, a gym cancellation form Carter had forgotten twice. Nothing like this. Miles pushed his glasses up. He explained the trust could be activated through a lawful marriage certificate and spousal acknowledgement. The license could be filed through an emergency judicial channel. It was unusual, but legal if both parties consent. Harper looked at Dominic and asked what would happen if she did not. He simply said he would find another way. Miles made a strangled sound and said there was no other way before sunrise. Dominic ignored him. Harper folded her arms because her hands were still trembling. She summarized her night. 2 hours ago, she had a fiancé. 1 hour ago, she was drinking in a bar. 30 minutes ago, men tried to kill him. Now she was in a warehouse being offered a job as his emergency wife. Dominic's mouth almost moved. He said more or less. Miles whispered that it was the worst proposal in Louisiana. He added it was not technically a proposal. Harper told Miles she was barely holding on to her sanity, so he should not help. He shut his mouth. Dominic stepped closer, stopping just outside the circle of light. Rain darkened his hair. The cut on his cheek had stopped bleeding, but a red line still marked his skin. He told her if she signed, she got his name. Caruso would back off her. No one would touch her without answering to him. Harper asked what he got in return. He said his inheritance, his companies, and his men alive. Harper searched his face. There was no romance in it. No softness, no lie dressed up as destiny. That made it easier to breathe. She asked about after. After the trust is secure, they could dissolve it. Miles nodded quickly. He said annulment was possible depending on timing and circumstances. Quietly handled, financial compensation could be arranged. Harper looked down at her bare finger. Carter's ring had left a mark. Dominic was offering a different kind of mark: protection, power. A name people feared enough to lower their voices. She thought of Carter standing in the living room, shirt open, asking to fix what he had broken. She thought of Brooke wearing her black camisole. She thought of her mother texting as if Harper were the threat to family peace. Her humiliation was already waiting for her. By morning, people would know something had happened. The wedding machine would begin to collapse. Guests would call. Vendors would ask questions. Carter would cry in the right rooms. Brooke would become fragile in public. Harper would become difficult unless she became something else first. Harper said she had conditions. Miles stared at her as if she had pulled a knife from her purse. Dominic's eyes held hers. He told her to name them. She listed them. 1. Caruso does not get near her. He promised he would not. 2. Carter finds out she is married before he gets to make her look abandoned. Dominic tilted his head and asked if that mattered to her. She said yes. He promised Carter would know. 3. She keeps her job. Miles blinked. Dominic said nothing. Harper lifted her chin. She said she was not disappearing into some velvet prison because men with guns had paperwork problems. Dominic studied her for a long second, then agreed. And 4, Harper said, her voice lower now. She stated she was not property. The warehouse seemed to quiet around them. Dominic stepped into the light. He softly agreed that she was not. Miles cleared his throat carefully. He said then both parties consent. Harper stared at the signature line. Harper Ellis. The name looked neat, reasonable, manageable. The name of a woman who paid deposits on time and apologized when other people bled on the floor. Her fingers closed around the pen. It was heavier than she expected. She signed before courage could change its mind. The pen scratched across the paper. Dominic took it from her hand. His fingers brushed hers, warm and calloused. He signed with brutal efficiency, each stroke dark and final. Miles gathered the papers like they were holy scripture and said he would file immediately. Harper took one step back. The room tilted. She reached for the edge of the desk and missed. Dominic caught her before she hit the concrete. His arm locked around her waist. His chest was solid against her cheek. He smelled like rain, smoke, and expensive wool. She whispered that she was fine. He replied she was not. That was the last thing she heard before the warehouse light folded into darkness. When Harper woke, the first thing she noticed was silence. Not apartment silence. Not the thin kind broken by neighbors, traffic, pipes, and Carter brushing his teeth too loudly. This silence was expensive. It had space inside it. She opened her eyes to a ceiling trimmed with crown molding. Morning light slipped through heavy charcoal curtains and cut a pale line across the floor. The bed beneath her was enormous, dressed in white sheets that smelled faintly of cedar and starch. For a moment, Harper did not move. Then memory arrived. The bar, the gunfire, the warehouse, the pen. Dominic's hand catching her. She sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Her head throbbed. Her mouth tasted like bourbon, rainwater, and bad decisions. She looked down. She was wearing a soft gray shirt that reached halfway down her thighs. Her underwear was still on. Her breath left her in a shaky rush. A quiet knock came from the door. Before she could answer, Dominic entered carrying a white mug. He had changed. Black slacks, charcoal shirt, bare forearms. No jacket, no gun visible, which somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. He set the mug on the bedside table. Coffee. Harper stared at him and asked if he always walked into bedrooms like doors were suggestions. He replied it was his house. She countered it was apparently her marriage. His gaze flicked to her left hand. A simple gold band sat on her finger. Harper's stomach dropped. She asked if that was necessary. Dominic said Miles thought the paperwork looked cleaner with rings. Of course Miles did. She reached for the coffee with both hands. It was black, strong, and hot enough to bring tears to her eyes. Dominic leaned against the doorframe. He said she was out for 8 hours. The doctor checked her. Dehydration, shock, alcohol, no concussion. Harper stopped, heat rising to her face. She asked if they did. Dominic's expression stayed deadpan. He asked if they consummated a legally reckless warehouse marriage while she was half-conscious and smelled like a distillery. She closed her eyes and asked him not to phrase it like that. She opened one eye and asked again. He said no, they did not. His housekeeper changed her wet clothes. He slept down the hall. Harper took another sip of coffee, mostly to hide her face. She mumbled good. Dominic watched her. He told her the filing went through at 5:42 this morning. The trust recognized the marriage. The assets were locked. Vincent Caruso knew. Her hand tightened around the mug. She asked how. Dominic said because people who want power pay for information. And Carter. Dominic pulled a phone from his pocket and placed it on the bed beside her. Harper recognized it. Her own. It was charged now. The screen lit up with missed calls. Carter. Brooke. Mom. Carter again. Carter again. Carter again. Then a news alert from a local society blog. Harper tapped it before she could stop herself. The headline read New Orleans. Shipping heir Dominic Vale marries mystery woman in private late-night ceremony. Her name appeared in the second paragraph. Harper Ellis, a local marketing strategist, is rumored to have married Vale in a confidential civil ceremony shortly before dawn. Harper whispered that her mother reads this blog. Dominic's voice was dry. He said then she knows she married up. Harper looked at him and said that was not comforting. He replied it was not meant to be. She threw back the covers and stood too quickly. The room swayed, but she stayed upright through pure spite. She said she needed her things. Dominic offered to send his men. She refused. Dominic's jaw shifted. She repeated no. She said her laptop was there. Her passport was there. Her clothes were there. Her grandmother's necklace was there. She was not letting strangers pack her life, while Carter and Brooke stood around, pretending she was the unstable one. Dominic crossed his arms and said it was not safe. She told him she stopped being safe when his enemy saw her face in a bar. That was exactly her point, and this was his. She walked out with nothing. She was going back with his name, his ring, and her spine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dominic checked his watch. He gave her 30 minutes to shower. The bathroom looked like a magazine spread designed by someone with a grudge against modesty. Black marble, brass fixtures, 2 shower heads, towels thick enough to qualify as blankets. Harper stood beneath water so hot it turned her skin pink. She watched bourbon, rain, and dried blood swirl down the drain. Not her blood, probably. She scrubbed until the smell of the black pelican disappeared, but memory remained. Carter's belt. Brooke's tears. Dominic's hand at the back of her neck, shoving her down before bullets could find her. When she stepped out, clothes waited on the vanity. Dark jeans, cream silk blouse, black flats, all in her size. That unsettled her more than the armed men. Downstairs, the house opened into a kitchen of dark wood, steel, and polished stone. Beyond tall windows, live oaks shaded a courtyard slick with rain. 2 men in suits stood near the back door. They straightened when Harper entered. Dominic sat at the island, reading something on a tablet. A plate of toast waited beside him. He told her to eat. Harper picked up a piece of toast and asked how he knew her size. He said he paid people to know things. She called it creepy. He called it efficient. She bit into the toast. It tasted like ash, but her stomach accepted it as peace. Dominic slid the tablet toward her. On the screen was the same article. Her own name looked strange beside his, Harper Ellis Vale. She swallowed and asked if that was legally her name now. He said if she wanted it. She admitted she did not know what she wanted. He said that made 2 of them. His honesty startled her, only for a second. Then he stood, picked up a black coat from the back of a chair, and nodded to his men. They drove to the garden district in a black SUV with tinted windows. Another car followed behind. Harper sat with her hands folded in her lap, twisting the gold band around her finger. Dominic drove. He did not speak. That made it worse and better. When they reached her building, 2 more men were already outside. They pretended not to watch every window, doorway, and parked car. Harper stepped onto the sidewalk. The building looked smaller than it had yesterday. Apartment 3B waited at the top of the stairs. Her key shook in her hand. Before she could slide it into the lock, the door opened. Carter stood there. He looked wrecked. Same pants from yesterday. White undershirt wrinkled, hair sticking up, eyes red and swollen. He breathed her name, his face crumpled with relief. He reached for her, then saw Dominic over her shoulder. His hands stopped in midair. He asked who this was. Dominic moved past Harper into the doorway. He did not shove Carter. He did not need to. Carter stepped back on instinct. Dominic's voice was quiet. He said he was her husband. The word filled the apartment like smoke. Carter laughed once. He said no, that was not funny. Harper walked inside. The apartment smelled like coffee, vanilla candles, and Brooke's citrus perfume. Her stomach turned. She told him it was not meant to be funny. Carter looked at her hand, at the gold band. His face went pale. He whispered that she was insane. Harper looked at the magnolia wallpaper. A wrinkle still marked the place where his shoulder had pressed into it. She said no, she was married. From the bedroom hallway, Brooke appeared in Carter's college sweatshirt. Harper felt the old wound open again. Brooke's eyes filled instantly. Dominic's men entered behind them, silent and broad-shouldered. Dominic did not look away from Carter. He ordered his men to pack her belongings, work equipment, personal documents, jewelry, and clothing carefully. The men moved down the hall. Carter snapped out of his shock. He said they could not just come into his apartment. Harper turned to him and reminded him her name was on the lease. He argued that she left. She countered she survived a very bad evening. Brooke stepped forward and pleaded as a sister. Harper looked at her. She told Brooke she lost the right to that word when she put on her clothes and touched her fiancé. Brooke recoiled as if struck. Carter's voice cracked. He defended Brooke, saying she was upset, vulnerable, and that he was wrong. Harper stared at him. There were moments so insulting they became clarifying. She told him he was still protecting her. Carter's mouth opened, but no words came. Harper walked past him into the living room and picked up the items that mattered. Her noise-canceling headphones. Her grandmother's silver necklace from the small dish near the bookshelf. A stack of marketing books with notes tucked inside. The blue ceramic mug she bought after her first promotion. Her hands shook, but she kept moving. Brooke hovered near the hallway. She swore she did not plan it, saying she was just jealous because everyone trusted Harper and she wanted someone to choose her. Harper stopped. Slowly, she turned. She said Brooke wanted to be chosen so badly, she took the man Harper was about to marry. Brooke's lip trembled. She said she knew it was wrong. Harper corrected her. She said Brooke knew it failed. Carter flinched. Dominic watched from near the doorway, still as a statue in a church built for violence. Harper reached for a framed photo on the side table. It showed her and Brooke at 17, standing on a Florida beach, their hair whipped across their faces. They were laughing so hard their eyes had disappeared. Harper had forgotten that version of them existed. For 1 second, the room blurred. Her fingers loosened. The frame slipped. Glass shattered across the hardwood. Brooke gasped. Carter said Harper's name like it hurt him. Harper stared at the broken glass, scattered over her sister's smiling face. A tear escaped before she could stop it. She hated it. She wiped it away quickly, but not quickly enough. Dominic crossed the room. He crouched without hesitation, picked the photo from the shards, and brushed glass from the corner with his thumb. Then he stood and handed it to her. His voice was low, meant only for her. He told her to leave the glass. Harper looked up. His eyes held no pity, only recognition. He told her to let them clean something for once. Harper took the photograph. The ache in her chest did not vanish. It changed shape. 10 minutes later, Dominic's men carried 4 boxes down the stairs. Harper placed her keys on the kitchen counter. Carter stood by the magnolia wallpaper, looking like a man watching the tide take his house. He whispered that he loved her. She paused at the door. Once, those words would have pulled her back. Now they sounded too small to cross the room. She told him no. She said he loved being forgiven. She walked out. Dominic followed. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Outside, morning light washed the street clean. But Harper knew better now. Some stains did not show until you changed the light. Dominic opened the SUV door for her this time. Harper looked at him, then at the city beyond his shoulder. For the first time since she had found Carter and Brooke against the wall, she did not feel like a woman running from something. She felt like a woman being carried toward the center of a storm. Dominic's phone rang before he could start the engine. He answered, listened, and his face hardened into something unreadable. Harper watched his hand tighten on the wheel. When he ended the call, the silence inside the SUV felt colder than the air outside. He told her Caruso knew she went back. Harper looked down at the ring on her finger. Dominic started the engine and said Caruso wanted to meet his wife. Dominic said it like he was talking about weather, but Harper heard the steel beneath the words. The SUV pulled away from the curb, leaving her old apartment building behind in the side mirror. For a moment, she watched the third-floor window grow smaller until the oak branches swallowed it. Somewhere behind that glass, Carter and Brooke stood among broken picture frame shards and boxes, half emptied of her life. Harper should have felt lighter. She did not. She felt scraped out, hollow in some places, burning in others. Dominic drove with one hand on the wheel. His face was unreadable beneath the shifting shadows of the oak-lined street. The gold band on Harper's finger caught a flash of sunlight and threw it across the dashboard. She turned the ring once, then again. She repeated Vincent Caruso's name. Dominic's eyes stayed on the road. He confirmed it was the man who sent people to shoot her, and now he wanted dinner. Harper sat down. She said that sounded like dinner with worse manners. Dominic almost smiled. He said usually. Harper looked at him and realized he was serious. She said he did not joke about Caruso. She asked what he wanted from her. Dominic said he wanted to see whether she was real. She frowned and said she was sitting right there. He explained Caruso did not care whether she breathed. He cared whether she mattered. There is a difference. The words settled between them, cold and precise. Harper turned toward the window. New Orleans rolled past in washed morning light, beautiful and indifferent. Garden walls, corner stores, men unloading crates behind restaurants, a woman pushing a stroller beneath a tree heavy with moss. The city looked ordinary, but Harper could feel another city beneath it now. One made of locked doors, private numbers, quiet threats, and men like Dominic Vale. Yesterday she had worried about centerpieces. Today, a Mafia boss wanted to verify her existence. She pressed her fingers against her temple. She mentioned she had a meeting with her boss at 9. Dominic glanced at her and told her to cancel it. Harper sharply said no. She reminded him she said she gets to keep her job. He pointed out she said it in a warehouse while half drunk and in shock, and he agreed while fully sober and holding a gun. He said that sounded binding. One of Dominic's men in the back seat made a small sound that might have been a cough. Dominic's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Silence returned instantly. Harper looked straight ahead. She stated she was not giving up the one normal thing she still had, because his enemies needed a dinner reservation. Dominic was quiet for a long stretch. Then he said fine. She looked at him. He told her to take her meeting, then get ready for Caruso. The estate gates opened before they reached them. The Vale house sat behind walls of stone and iron, half hidden by live oaks and dripping green vines. It should have been beautiful. It was beautiful. But beauty changed when armed men stood near the driveway and security cameras followed the car like black eyes. Inside, the house smelled like coffee, polished wood, and rain-soaked earth. Harper was shown to Dominic's study, a room paneled in dark walnut with shelves full of old books that looked unread by everyone except dust. A massive desk faced tall windows overlooking the courtyard. A fountain whispered outside. Beyond it, 2 men in black coats opened the back of a delivery truck and began removing crates. Harper set her laptop on the desk. Dominic stood near the door. He told her she could work there. She sarcastically thanked him for the permission. His mouth tightened. He said he was trying not to lock her in a room. She called that generous. Their eyes met. The tension between them had changed since the apartment. Something had shifted when he knelt in the broken glass and handed her that old photograph without asking her to forgive anyone. Harper did not know what to call it. She did not want to call it anything. Dominic looked away first. He said he would be nearby. She asked if that was supposed to comfort her. He said no, it was supposed to warn everyone else. He left. Harper stared at the closed door for several seconds before opening her laptop. Mason Reed appeared on screen at 9 sharp. He was pixelated and already annoyed. Behind him, The glass conference room at Harper's office glowed under fluorescent lights. 3 coworkers sat at the table with coffees, notebooks, and the blank expressions of people pretending they had read the deck. Mason noticed her background looked different. Harper glanced at the antique bookshelves behind her. She lied about a plumbing issue at her apartment, saying she had to relocate to a law library. Mason frowned and asked if she was okay. He mentioned Carter called reception that morning looking for her. He said it was personal, and Carter sounded upset. Her stomach tightened. Harper clicked to the first slide. She said he could stay upset and told them to start with campaign performance. Mason blinked. One of her coworkers looked down quickly, pretending not to hear. Harper moved through the numbers with the kind of focus that had saved her more than once. Click-through rates had risen 12%. Checkout abandonment had increased after the payment step. Mobile traffic was strong, but trust signals on the landing page were weak. She spoke clearly, calmly, as if her wedding had not detonated, as if there were not men outside searching crates for tracking devices, as if she were not legally married to the most dangerous man in New Orleans. Halfway through the meeting, the study doors opened. Dominic entered without knocking. Harper kept talking, but her words snagged. He had changed clothes again. Black dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His knuckles were wrapped in white tape. A bruise darkened the edge of his jaw. There was a small cut on his lower lip and blood on his cuff. Not much. Enough. He crossed to the sideboard and poured whiskey into a crystal glass. Mason leaned closer to his screen and asked if someone was there. Harper reached for mute. Too late. Dominic looked at the laptop and told her to wrap it up. Harper closed her eyes for 1 second. Mason's voice rose, asking who that was. Harper quickly said it was her contractor. Dominic turned, glass in hand. He repeated her contractor questioningly. She stabbed the mute button, then glared at him. She told him not to speak while she was on a work call. He reminded her she was in his study. She reminded him she was in her meeting. His gaze moved over her face, then to the screen, then back again. A strange look crossed his eyes. Not amusement, not anger, something like reluctant fascination. He asked if she was really doing this. She asked what he meant, discussing banner ads while his men pulled a tracker out of a crate downstairs. She said yes, because unlike some people, she understood brand continuity. This time, Dominic did smile briefly, dangerously. It disappeared before she could decide what it did to her pulse. He said dinner was at 7. He told her Sophia left a dress upstairs. Harper asked who Sophia was. He said she was the woman who knew better than to argue with him about clothes. Harper stated then she and Sophia had nothing in common. Dominic looked at her for a beat too long. He quietly agreed they did not. He left. Harper unmuted. Mason was staring, asking if everything was okay. Harper smiled with every ounce of corporate polish she had left. She said absolutely, and continued discussing how the issue was not awareness, but trust. By 6:30, Harper stood before a mirror in a bedroom that still did not feel like hers. Sophia had left a black silk dress on the bed. It was simple, sleeveless, cut close to the body without being vulgar. The kind of dress that did not ask for attention because it had already taken it. Beside it sat a velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring. Harper stared at it. The stone was large, clear, and cold as ice under the lamp. She heard the door open behind her. Dominic appeared in the mirror. He wore a black suit and no tie. His bruised jaw made him look more brutal, not less. His eyes moved over her once, then returned to her face. Harper held up the ring. She called it subtle. He said Caruso understands symbols. She said she understood, but the thing could drown her. Dominic stepped closer. He asked if he may. The question surprised her. She nodded. He took the ring from the box and slid it onto her finger beside the gold band. His touch was careful, almost too careful. The diamond settled against her skin, heavy and undeniable. Harper looked at their hands in the mirror, his large scarred fingers, her slim hand. The ring that made a lie look ancient. He told her she looked like she belonged in a different life. She met his eyes in the reflection and asked if that was a compliment. He said it was an observation. She told him to try harder. There was a pause, his voice lowered. He said she looked like trouble he should have seen coming. The words moved through her slowly. Harper looked away first. The restaurant was hidden beneath a French Quarter hotel with velvet curtains, brick walls, and lighting dim enough to make every face look guilty. The back room had been emptied for them. Dominic sat beside Harper at the long table, calm as stone. 4 of his men stood near the exits. Across the room, 3 men loyal to Caruso watched them with dead eyes. Vincent Caruso arrived 10 minutes late. He was older than Harper expected, silver-haired and polished, with a smile that never reached his eyes. His suit was navy and too glossy under the lights. A gold ring gleamed on his little finger. He carried himself like a man who believed every room was already halfway his. He greeted Dominic. Caruso's gaze moved to Harper. He called her the bride. Harper lifted her glass but did not drink. She introduced herself as Harper Vale. Caruso smiled, already using the name. He said that was ambitious. She replied she had a busy morning. Dominic's hand rested on his thigh, still and close to the inside of his jacket. Caruso sat across from them. A waiter appeared, poured wine, and vanished with the survival instincts of a man who wanted to see another sunrise. Caruso pointed out that a marketing strategist from the Garden District becoming Mrs. Dominic Vale overnight was quite a career pivot. Harper smiled politely. She said she believed in transferable skills. Caruso laughed. It sounded dry. He asked Dominic if she always answered like that. Dominic did not look away from him. He simply said she answers for herself. Caruso leaned back. He said good. Then she could tell him why he should believe this marriage was anything but ink on paper. Harper felt the room tighten around her. She could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the scrape of Caruso's ring against his wine glass, her own heartbeat too fast beneath the silk dress. She thought of the apartment, Carter reaching for her, Brooke crying, the shattered photograph. Dominic's voice came beside her, low and even. He stated the trust accepted the filing, the board recognized the transfer, and Caruso lost his window. Caruso ignored him. His eyes stayed on Harper. He asked if Dominic paid her. Harper tilted her head. She said that seemed like a rude question for dinner. He told her this was not dinner. She agreed, saying the wine was too tense. One of Dominic's men shifted near the wall. Caruso's smile thinned. He told her she was either brave or stupid. He added most women are called stupid before men admit they are brave. Dominic's fingers tapped once against his leg. Caruso noticed. So did Harper. His gaze sharpened. He told Dominic that she amused him. Harper said nothing. Caruso picked up his knife and turned it lazily between his fingers. Not a threat exactly. Not yet. Just a reminder that everything could become one. He said he made some calls. He mentioned Carter Brooks, accountant. Nice building, nice future before yesterday. He mentioned her sister Brooke, a pretty girl with a messy reputation. He said her mother in Baton Rouge seemed worried sick. Harper's fingers tightened around her napkin beneath the table. Caruso watched her face like a man waiting for a crack in glass. He continued, saying families are fragile. A sister makes a mistake. A fiancé loses his head. A mother gets frightened. People say things, sign things, testify to things. Dominic's voice dropped. He told Vincent to be careful. Caruso smiled at him. He said he was speaking to his wife. Then back to Harper. He asked how long a woman stays married when her little family begins to suffer for it. The fear came first. It rose cold from her stomach to her throat. Brooke's face flashed in her mind. Then her mother's. Then Carter, standing hollow in the apartment doorway. For all her rage, Harper did not want bodies left at the edges of her choices. Caruso saw the fear. His smile widened. That was his mistake, because beneath the fear, the anger woke up. Harper set her wine glass down. The sound was small, but it cut clean through the room. She asked if he thought they were leverage. Caruso's knife stopped moving. Harper leaned forward. She asked if he thought because Carter had her ring yesterday, she would fold if he said his name tonight. She asked if he thought because Brooke was her blood, she would forget Brooke put a blade in her back and cried because it stained her dress. She asked if he thought her mother's worry still knew the difference between love and control. Her voice stayed even. That surprised her. Maybe it surprised everyone. She told him she came to this table with nothing he could hold over her. Caruso's eyes narrowed. He said everyone has something. Harper agreed but said he picked the wrong ghosts. Silence spread. Dominic turned his head slightly toward her. Harper did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Caruso. She told him if Carter was in danger, protect him or do not. If Brooke cries, let her. If her mother calls, she can leave a message. She warned him not to wave the wreckage of her old life in her face and call it power. Caruso's smile was gone now. Harper's pulse thundered, but her hands were steady. She said she was sitting there because Carter made her disposable, because Brooke thought wanting something made it hers, because everyone expected her to clean up the mess quietly. She told Caruso if he came looking for a woman who would beg him not to disturb that life, he was too late. The room held its breath. Dominic laughed once, low, rough, almost proud. He told Caruso he heard his wife. Caruso looked at him, then back at Harper. For the first time, there was no amusement in his face, only calculation. He told her she had a dangerous mouth. Harper lifted her glass and said she had been told she was excellent in meetings. Dominic's smile was gone, but something burned in his eyes. Caruso stood so suddenly his chair scraped against the floor. He stated the marriage would be challenged. Dominic rose with him and told him to challenge it. He said the board might enjoy his little performance, but courts are less romantic. Dominic stepped close enough that the men near the walls shifted their hands toward their coats. He promised Caruso that if he touched his wife, her family, or one crate marked Vale, he would feed his empire to the river one dock at a time. Caruso's jaw tightened. He looked at Harper one last time. He said there is always a price. Harper held his stare and told him to send an invoice. Caruso left with his men behind him. The velvet curtain fell closed. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then Harper's body remembered fear. Her hands started shaking so violently the wine in her glass rippled. She set it down before she dropped it. Dominic sat beside her again, his presence suddenly closer than before. He noticed she was shaking. She said she knew, but she did not show him. She admitted she was afraid if she started, she would not stop. He reached beneath the table and covered her hand with his, warm, scarred, steady. Harper stared at their joined hands. She whispered that he should not have mentioned her family. He said he did not. She said she knew what he meant. He told her he already had men watching them. Her eyes snapped to his. He listed Carter's building, her mother's street, her sister's apartment if she decided to crawl back to it. He promised Caruso would not get near them. Harper stared at him and asked why. Dominic's thumb brushed once over her knuckles. He said because they are hers to hate, not his to use. Something in Harper's chest shifted so sharply it almost hurt. That was not kindness, not in any clean or simple way. It was darker. It had teeth. But it was the first time in years someone had looked at her pain and not tried to spend it for themselves. The drive back to the estate was silent. Rain misted the windshield. Bourbon Street lights smeared across the glass in red and gold before fading behind them. Harper sat with Dominic's jacket around her shoulders because he had placed it there without asking, and she had been too tired to refuse. At the gate, the guards let them through. Dominic parked in front of the house but did not get out. The engine ticked softly. Harper looked down at the diamond ring. She murmured that she meant what she said in there about Carter and Brooke, but she did not want them dead. Dominic turned toward her. He said he knew because she looked sick after she said it. Harper let out a breath that almost became a laugh. She pointed out that he noticed everything. He said it was why he was alive. She looked at his bruised jaw, the cut on his lip, the darkness under his eyes. She said he must be exhausted. He agreed. She asked why he was still sitting there. His eyes dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. He said because if he got out of this car, he might remember what a smart man would do. Harper's pulse changed. She asked what a smart man would do. He said a smart man would send her upstairs, lock her door, put guards in the hall, and wait for morning. She asked what he was doing instead. He did not answer. The air in the SUV grew thin. Harper reached across the console and placed her hand against his chest right over his heart. Beneath the fine fabric of his shirt, his heartbeat was slow and hard. Dominic went still. He breathed her name. It sounded like a warning pulled tight enough to snap. She reminded him they used each other. He agreed. She said she used his name because she wanted Carter to feel small. He knew. She said he used hers because he needed a wife. He agreed again. Her fingers curled slightly against his shirt. She asked if that was still all this was. Dominic's control fractured in his eyes before the rest of him moved. He reached for her with sudden silent force, one hand sliding behind her neck, fingers threading into her hair. He pulled her across the console and kissed her. It was not gentle. There was nothing careful in it. The kiss tasted like whiskey, rain, and the kind of hunger neither of them had agreed to name. Harper gasped against his mouth, then kissed him back with everything she had been too proud, too hurt, and too frightened to say. His hand tightened at her waist. The diamond bit into his shoulder where she gripped him. He did not flinch. For one suspended moment, the world outside the SUV vanished. No Carter, no Brooke, no Caruso, no trust. Only Dominic's mouth on hers, and the terrible relief of wanting something that did not pretend to be safe. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. Both of them were breathing hard. His voice was rough. He told her she was going to complicate everything. Harper's hand stayed twisted in his shirt. She said she thought he liked useful complications. His eyes opened. Dark, hot, unreadable. He said he liked winning. She looked at him, no longer sure whether the danger was outside the car or sitting inches from her. She told him then do not lose her. For the first time since she had met him, Dominic Vale looked genuinely shaken, only for a heartbeat. Then his hand covered hers. He stated he does not lose what he claims. Harper should have hated that. Some part of her did. Another part, the part born somewhere between broken glass and a dinner table full of threats, leaned closer. Inside the house, a phone began ringing. Dominic closed his eyes for one brief second, then answered it. He listened without speaking. Harper watched his expression harden. The warmth left the car. When he ended the call, the man who had kissed her was still there, but the boss had returned over him like armor. Harper asked what happened. Dominic looked toward the house. He said one of his dispatch offices just went dark. Harper sat back slowly. The rain kept sliding down the windshield, turning the estate lights into wavering gold. Dominic opened his door. Harper removed his jacket from her shoulders and stepped out beside him. This time, when he walked toward the house, she followed before he asked. The call changed the house before Dominic even reached the front steps. Men who had been standing quiet beneath the porch lights suddenly moved with purpose. Doors opened. Radios crackled. A black sedan rolled down the driveway without headlights, its tires hissing over wet stone. Somewhere inside the estate, a woman's voice gave instructions in clipped Italian, calm enough to sound more frightening than panic. Harper followed Dominic through the front door. The warmth of the house hit her first, then the smell of coffee, gun oil, wet wool, and something electric in the air like a storm trapped indoors. Dominic crossed the foyer without slowing. He asked which office. One of his men, Enzo, fell into step beside him. He was broad, dark-haired, and built like a locked door. Enzo said Dispatch 3, Chupitula Street. Cameras cut out 7 minutes ago. Phones are dead. They sent Luca and Dean, but no response yet. Dominic's jaw tightened. He asked how many were inside. Enzo said 4 on shift and 2 drivers waiting on route clearance. Harper stopped near the base of the staircase. 6 people. Not numbers. Not assets. People inside a dark office because of a war she had married into before sunrise. Dominic turned into his study. The doors remained open. Men followed him in, filling the room with soaked coats and hard voices. Harper stood in the hallway for one breath, then another. She could go upstairs. Nobody would stop her. She could wash off the dinner, the kiss, the threat of Vincent Caruso's smile. She could close a bedroom door and pretend the ringing phones and armed men belonged to a life adjacent to hers, not one now wrapped around her finger in golden ice. Instead, she stepped into the study. Dominic stood over the desk while Enzo spread a map across the polished wood. Red circles marked warehouses, dispatch offices, docks, access roads. Harper recognized none of it and all of it. A system, a network, a machine with human fear running through its gears. Enzo said the outage was too clean. No weather, no city grid report, no accident. Dominic pointed to the riverside of the map. He said Caruso was pulling attention south. He wanted them chasing shadows while he hit the transfer routes. Another man shook his head and said it could be the East Yard. Dominic's eyes went cold. He said if it were the East Yard, he would have made noise. This is quiet. Quiet means inside access. The word struck Harper. Inside access. She looked at the map again, then at the stack of shipping reports on the corner of Dominic's desk. She had seen similar documents earlier that morning while pretending not to stare. Container codes, driver names, dispatch times, routing approvals. Her brain reached for a familiar structure because panic had always made her practical. She asked what system his dispatch offices used. Every man in the room looked at her. Dominic did not. He kept his gaze on the map. He said her name. She stepped closer and said she was asking a real question. She asked if the routes were scheduled through one central platform or separate office logins. Enzo blinked and said it was a central platform with access tiered by location. Harper asked who could override route clearance. Silence. Dominic finally looked at her. He said supervisors, regional operations, and him. Harper pointed to the reports. She asked if those print from the same system. He said yes. She told him to give her one. No one moved. Harper turned to Dominic. She reminded him he said Caruso thought she was fake. She told him to let him be wrong twice tonight. For a second, Dominic stared at her as if measuring the cost of letting her closer. Then he picked up a folder and handed it over. The paper was still warm from a printer. Harper sat at the desk without asking permission and opened Dominic's laptop. It was locked. She held out her hand and asked for the password. Enzo made a sound. Dominic gave it to her. The room shifted again. Harper typed it in. His desktop opened onto encrypted folders, operational dashboards, and enough legal gray area to bury a senator. She ignored everything except the dispatch reports. Numbers calmed her. Patterns calmed her. Dates and times did not care who had broken her heart. They told the truth if a person knew how to ask properly. She pulled up route histories from the last 30 days. She filtered by delays, overrides, manual adjustments, and location-specific outages. Dominic stood behind her, silent. His presence should have distracted her. It did not. She was too deep in the data now. She pointed and said there. Enzo leaned closer and asked what it was. Harper explained Dispatch 3 had a manual route change last Thursday at 8:17 p.m. Then again the Thursday before. Same window, same supervisor approval, same secondary vendor attached to the shipment. Dominic's voice was low. He asked which vendor. Harper read Bayline Freight Services. Enzo frowned. He said they used them for overflow. Harper clicked another report. She pointed out they use them when the route is marked low risk. But the low risk label was being applied after the original route was created. Someone was changing the classification, then sending the shipment through Bayline. She opened another tab. She asked who C. Bell was. Enzo's face hardened. He said Caleb Bell, dispatch supervisor. Been with them 4 years. Harper looked at Dominic. She said either Caleb Bell is sloppy, compromised, or dead. Dominic's eyes went flat. He told Enzo to find him. Enzo pulled out his phone and moved toward the hall. Harper kept reading. The room faded around her. Rain struck the windows. Men spoke in low tones. Somewhere a phone rang, then stopped. She followed the chain of altered routes across the screen, one shipment at a time. She saw the shape of Caruso's hand in the gaps. Not random, not brute force. A leak, a quiet one. Dominic leaned over her shoulder and asked what she saw. Harper swallowed. She said he does not want the crates tonight. Dominic went still. Harper explained Caruso wants to know which drivers they send when something goes wrong. She clicked the last report and turned the screen slightly. She showed him that for every outage, every delay, every false alarm, they responded with the same 3 people: Luca, Dean, and Enzo. Caruso had been mapping their emergency reflexes. Dominic's face darkened. Harper looked up. She told him Dispatch 3 going dark was bait. The study exploded into motion. Dominic snapped orders so fast Harper barely followed them. Men redirected. Cars turned around. Alternate channels opened. Enzo came back from the hall with his phone still to his ear and his expression carved from stone. He announced Caleb Bell was missing. Dominic did not curse. That made it worse. He ordered them to pull Luca and Dean back. Enzo said he was already trying, but there was no response. Harper's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She asked if they could track the vehicles. Enzo looked at her and said they disabled the primary tracker. Harper asked if primary meant there was a secondary. Dominic's eyes cut to Enzo. The larger man hesitated. Harper looked between them and asked what they were hiding. Dominic answered. There are private trackers on certain vehicles, not in the official system. Harper demanded access. He said her name in warning. She told him he could argue after he got his men back. Dominic held her gaze. Then he reached past her and opened a hidden application. A map appeared. 3 blinking dots. 1 close, two moving along the river road. Harper zoomed in. She stated they were not going to dispatch 3. Enzo leaned over the desk. He said they were headed to Algiers Point. Dominic's voice dropped. He said that was Caruso's side. The room chilled. Harper stared at the moving lights. She deduced he made the office go dark so they would respond. Then he spoofed the route. Dominic asked how she knew. She said the map showed them moving, but the route history said they stopped 4 minutes ago. Dominic's hand braced on the back of her chair. Harper clicked through the system logs. She said the tracker feed was being delayed. Someone wanted them to think they were still driving. Dominic turned to Enzo and told him to call the river unit now. Enzo moved. Harper's pulse pounded in her throat. Dominic crouched beside her chair, bringing his face level with hers. He told her to find the real location. She stared at the screen and said she was trying. The room became a tunnel of light and data. She searched for the most recent signal ping before the delay began. She cross-referenced it with traffic cameras, compared access roads, and looked for any place close enough to the last true signal and useful enough for an ambush. She pointed and said there, an old refrigeration warehouse near the train tracks, former seafood storage, closed 2 years ago, still connected to a service road that did not show on most consumer maps. Dominic stood. Men moved before he spoke. He looked at Harper for 1 sharp second and told her to stay there. The words hit harder than they should have. Harper rose and said no. Dominic's face went still. Harper told him he does not get to pull her into the room when she is useful and push her out when things get bloody. This was not dinner. This was not a boardroom. This was men with rifles in the dark. If his system was compromised, he needed someone there who could still read it while he was out there. He stated that was why she had to stay. Harper stepped closer. She told him to say that, instead of saying it like she was furniture he was putting in storage. The silence between them changed. Dominic's anger did not fade. It focused. He told her to stay in this study with 2 guards. Keep that screen open. Tell Enzo everything she sees. Do not leave this house. Harper wanted to argue. She also knew he was right. She nodded once. Dominic turned to go, then stopped. His eyes moved to her mouth, then away. He told her to lock the doors behind him. He left before she could answer. The next hour became a fever. Harper sat at Dominic's desk wearing black silk and diamonds, tracking vehicles, camera outages, route changes, and emergency chatter while armed men guarded the doors. Her hands shook only when they were not typing. Enzo stayed on speaker. His voice came through, clipped by static. He reported 2 alive, 1 wounded, no sign of Caleb. Harper closed her eyes for half a second. Alive. Dominic's voice cut through the line. He told Harper to find Caleb's last login. She opened the logs. 11:42 p.m. from Dispatch 3. Dominic asked if it was remote or on site. She said on site, a pause. Then Dominic said no, he was gone by then. Harper understood. Someone used his credentials. She searched again, deeper. The login came from Dispatch 3, but the system update had been pushed from a mobile device. She traced the device tag through the access records. Her stomach tightened. She said Dominic's name. He asked what it was. She told him the device belonged to Miles. The line went silent. Enzo cursed. Harper stared at the screen, willing the data to rearrange itself into something less dangerous. It did not. Dominic's voice returned, colder than before. He asked if she was sure. She said yes. The office door opened behind Harper. She turned. Miles Adler stood in the doorway, pale and sweating, his coat damp from rain. One of the guards reached for his gun. Miles lifted both hands and said he could explain. Harper stood slowly. The phone was still connected on the desk. Dominic could hear everything. Miles took 1 step inside. He swore he did not know they were going to hurt anyone. Harper's pulse steadied in a way that frightened her. She told him that is what people say when they know enough. Miles looked at the guards, then at Harper. He said they had his brother. Caruso had his brother. He said Caruso only needed access logs, just logs. He gave him old route permissions, not names. Dominic's voice came through the speaker, low and lethal. He said Miles' name. The lawyer flinched as if Dominic had touched him. He pleaded with him. Harper kept her eyes on Miles. She asked if he filed their marriage documents cleanly. Miles blinked in confusion. She told him to answer her. He said yes, of course. She asked if Caruso could challenge the trust through him. Miles swore to God, no. He said he did not touch the filing. Harper believed him. Not because he deserved belief, but because fear made him messy, and the answer came too fast to be invented. She looked at the guards. She ordered them to take his phone, search him, and put him in a room with no computer. Miles stared at her and said she could not do that. Harper looked at him, and something in her voice belonged to the woman at Caruso's table. She told him she was Mrs. Vale. Apparently, she could do all sorts of things now. The guards moved. Miles did not fight. On the phone, Dominic said nothing. Harper sat back down and kept working. By dawn, the estate was quiet in the exhausted way of places that had survived the night, but not forgotten it. Dominic returned at 6:18 a.m. His shirt was torn at the sleeve. There was dried blood on his collar. His left hand had been wrapped badly, probably in a moving car. He entered the study and stopped just inside the door. Harper was still at the desk. The black dress was wrinkled. Her hair had fallen loose. Empty coffee cups sat beside the laptop. The diamond on her finger flashed in the weak morning light. Neither of them spoke at first. Then Dominic looked toward the hall. He noted Miles was locked in the blue sitting room with 2 guards and no phone. His mouth moved slightly. He said she locked his attorney in a sitting room. Harper replied he leaked access credentials to Caruso. Dominic added he also saved his life twice. Harper said that was why he was in a sitting room and not the river. Dominic stared at her. Then he laughed. It was quiet, rough, and gone quickly, but it changed the air. Harper rose, and the room tilted from lack of sleep. Dominic crossed to her before she could reach for the desk. His hand caught her elbow. He told her she should have slept. She told him he should have hired better cybersecurity. His eyes searched her face. There was something raw in him now, something the night had stripped down past control. He told her she found the leak, found the pattern, saved Luca and Dean, and listened. He looked down at his hand on her arm, then released her slowly. He told her to go upstairs. She did not have the strength to argue this time. She said fine. She took 2 steps, then stopped. She turned to him. She told him if Miles' brother is alive, get him back. Dominic's expression did not change, but his eyes did. He said Miles betrayed him, and he was afraid. She told him that does not excuse it, but if fear made him useful to Caruso once, grief will make him useful forever. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. 2 weeks passed. But time inside the Vale estate did not move like normal time. It moved in phone calls after midnight, in cars leaving without lights, and whispered reports outside Dominic's study. It moved in bruises fading from his jaw and stitches removed from Enzo's shoulder. It moved in Miles sitting pale and silent across from Dominic after his brother was recovered from a storage unit outside Baton Rouge. Miles did not get forgiveness. He got terms. Harper wrote half of them. At first, Dominic's men looked at her as if she were a complication wearing silk. Then they watched her rebuild their routing reports, flag vendor anomalies, and create a system that showed which shipments had been touched by compromised accounts. She made charts. Dominic hated the charts until they caught 2 Caruso shell companies in one afternoon. After that, he stopped hating them out loud. Harper kept her job, barely. Mason Reed believed she was dealing with a family emergency, a plumbing disaster, and possibly a divorce, though not necessarily in that order. Harper attended video calls from Dominic's study with the camera angled carefully away from gun cabinets, blood-stained cuffs, and men who entered to discuss threats as if they were weather patterns. Once, Dominic walked behind her while she was presenting a campaign report and silently placed a cup of coffee beside her laptop. Mason paused and asked if that was her contractor again. Harper took the coffee. She said, "No, that is my husband." The silence from the conference room lasted 4 full seconds. Dominic disappeared into the hall with the faintest smile. At night, Harper learned the house, the balcony where Dominic smoked when he did not want anyone to know he was tired, the small chapel near the east wing that nobody used, but everyone kept clean, the old portrait of Dominic's father in the library. A man with Dominic's eyes and none of his restraint. One night, Harper found Dominic standing beneath that portrait, drink untouched in his hand. She asked if he wrote the marriage clause because of his mother. Dominic did not look surprised. He rarely did anymore. He said his mother left when he was 9. His father called it betrayal. He decided a wife made a man stable, because losing one made him cruel. Harper stood beside him. She said, "That is not stability, that is a leash." He agreed. She asked why he did not marry before. His mouth tightened. He said because he refused to let a dead man choose the shape of his life. Harper looked at him. She reminded him he let her sign. He said she chose. She argued she was drunk and furious. He countered she was clear enough to set conditions. She could not argue with that. The space between them had grown more dangerous in quiet ways. They still fought often about guards outside her door, about whether she could visit her office, about Dominic answering questions with commands because he had forgotten some people did not work for him. They fought about Harper pushing too deep into operations that could get her killed. Then there were the other moments. His hand at her lower back as they moved through a room full of men who did not yet know whether to respect her. His coat around her shoulders during a storm. The way he listened when she talked through a theory. Not politely, but fully. The way he looked at her when she saw the move before his lieutenants did. Not soft, never soft, but present. One morning the board came to the estate. 8 men in expensive suits sat around Dominic's conference table and tried not to stare at Harper in the chair beside him. She wore a white blouse, black trousers, and the diamond ring Caruso had seen. Her laptop sat open in front of her. A board member named Patrick Voss cleared his throat. He respectfully told Dominic his wife did not need to be present for operational review. Harper smiled. Dominic leaned back and told her to tell him why she was there, so Harper did. She walked them through the compromised vendor chain, the altered dispatch routes, the emergency response pattern Caruso had used, and the 3 fixes already in place. She spoke in clean sentences with no wasted drama. Men who had entered the room expecting decoration slowly began taking notes. Patrick Voss tried once more. He said this was not exactly a marketing campaign. Harper agreed, but she pointed out it is audience behavior. Caruso tested their response, measured their habits, identified their emotional triggers, and used repetition until he could predict them. That is strategy. Their mistake was assuming crime makes men original. Dominic's eyes moved to her. Pride looked dangerous on him. By the end of the meeting, Patrick Voss did not interrupt her again. By the end of the week, Caruso requested temporary peace terms. Temporary. Harper had laughed when she saw the word. Dominic asked what was funny. She said men love calling surrender temporary. He stared at her, then handed her the file and told her to read it. She did. At the kitchen island just after sunrise, with black coffee and 2 hours of sleep, Miles sat across from her. He had lost weight in 2 weeks. Fear had carved his face thinner, but his hands no longer shook when he opened a briefcase. He slid a folder toward Harper. She looked at it and asked what it was. Miles glanced toward the hallway. He said Dominic asked him to prepare them. Harper opened the folder. Annulment papers. Her maiden name sat at the top, Harper Ellis. The letters looked clean, familiar, and strangely lifeless. Miles spoke gently, which made it worse. He said the trust was secure. The board recognized the transfer. Caruso had accepted boundaries for now. Dominic wanted her to have a clean exit. Harper turned the page. Financial settlement. $5 million. No admission of wrongdoing. Confidentiality terms. Personal security for 6 months. Return of all personal property. Her chest tightened. She said he told him to offer her money. Miles said he told him to make sure she could go anywhere she wanted. Harper looked toward the hallway. Dominic was not there. Of course he was not there. A man like Dominic Vale could stand in gunfire, but not in front of a woman he was freeing. Miles waited. Harper closed the folder. She said she needed the car. The old apartment building looked different in daylight. Smaller, tired, ordinary. Harper stood outside the front entrance, with one of Dominic's guards waiting near the curb. She had not told Dominic she was coming. Maybe that was cowardly. Maybe it was necessary. Carter came down after her second call. He looked thinner, unshaven, dressed in a wrinkled blue shirt that had once been his favorite. For a moment, seeing him hurt in the old place. Not because she wanted him, but because grief sometimes wore familiar faces long after love had left. He said her name. He looked at the guard near the car, then back at her. He said she came. She held out an envelope and said she needed to return the lease papers. He did not take it right away. He said he had called her. She said she knew. He mentioned Brooke moved back to their mother's. Harper said nothing. Carter swallowed. He said she says she made a mistake. Harper agreed they both did. He flinched at the simplicity. He said he hated himself for it. Harper believed him. That surprised her. His remorse was real. It was also too late to be useful. He whispered he did not know how to fix this. Harper looked past him, up at the window of apartment 3B. She asked if he really did not. His eyes filled. He said he still loved her. There it was. The sentence she had once wanted more than anything. After every forgotten dinner, every dismissed worry, every time he made her feel dramatic for needing more, now it landed softly and died. She told him he loved the version of her that kept his life easy. He said that was not fair. She said it was accurate. He dragged a hand through his hair. He asked about Dominic Vale. He asked if she thought he loved her. Harper looked toward the street where the black car waited. She said she thinks he sees her. Carter looked away. The words hurt him. She did not enjoy it. That was how she knew she was finished. The building door opened behind him. Brooke stepped out. No makeup, hair pulled back. One of their mother's old sweaters wrapped around her shoulders. She looked younger without the performance. Or maybe Harper was finally too tired to watch the show. Brooke stopped when she saw her. Carter stepped aside. For a moment, the sisters stood facing each other beneath the old brick archway. Brooke's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She apologized. Harper held the envelope against her side and said she knew. Brooke blinked and asked if she did. Harper said yes. A tiny hope crossed Brooke's face. Harper let it pass before it reached her. She told Brooke she knew she was sorry now, and she probably even meant it, but Harper could not carry that for her. Brooke's mouth trembled. She said she was jealous. Harper said she knew that too. Brooke said Harper always seemed so sure. Harper almost laughed, not cruelly, sadly. She said she was never sure, she was just responsible. Brooke looked down. Carter stood silent beside them, a man finally outside the center of the story. Brooke whispered and asked if she was happy. Harper thought of Dominic's study at dawn, the blood on his collar, the way he said her name when he was angry, afraid, or trying not to want her. The way the board had gone quiet when she spoke. The way her own reflection no longer looked like a woman waiting to be chosen. She told Brooke she was awake. Brooke closed her eyes. Harper handed Carter the envelope. Then she walked back to the car without another word. The estate was quiet when she returned. Too quiet. Harper found Dominic in his study, standing by the window with his back to the room. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a holster over his shoulders. Morning light cut along his profile, turning him into something carved and unreachable. He noted she went to see Carter. Harper stopped near the desk and said yes. His shoulders did not move. He asked if she took a guard. She said yes, and that was all. No accusation, no demand, no wounded male pride. Somehow that made her chest ache more. She told him Miles gave her the papers and the money. He said she earned more. She stepped closer. She told him he does not get to make that sound noble from across the room. Dominic turned then. His face was controlled, but his eyes were not. He stated he was not noble. She told him he was hiding. His expression hardened. He told her to be careful. She said she was tired of careful. He said she should not be. His voice was low now. He said careful keeps people alive in this house. Harper placed the folder on his desk. She asked if that was why he had Miles give these to her instead of doing it himself. His jaw tightened. He said he gave her an exit. She said he gave her paperwork. He said he gave her freedom. She told him no. Freedom would have been looking her in the eye while he offered it. The room went still. Dominic looked at the folder. He asked if she thought he wanted her gone. She said she thought he was afraid she would stay and regret it. His silence answered before he did. Harper stepped closer until only a foot of space remained between them. Dominic's voice dropped. He warned her that if she stayed in blood, not dinner parties and clever spreadsheets. Blood. Men would come for her because they could not reach him. She would learn how many locks a bedroom can have. She would wonder which cars were clean, which phones were safe, which smiles were knives. She would lose the right to be ordinary. Harper listened. Every word was true. That was why they mattered. She asked if he thought ordinary was saving her. His eyes flashed. He said it was safer, it was smaller. She agreed small is alive, but so is trapped. Dominic looked away first, and that told her more than victory would have. Harper opened the folder and removed the annulment papers. Her name waited on the signature line. Harper Ellis. She had been that woman. She honored her. She mourned her. But she could not crawl back into her old name and call it healing. She tore the papers in half. Dominic went motionless. He breathed her name. She tore them again. The sound was crisp in the quiet room. He told her not to do that because she was angry. She said she was not angry. That would be a first. She almost smiled. Then she dropped the pieces into the empty fireplace. She admitted she was angry when she signed the marriage license. She was humiliated, drunk, reckless. She wanted Carter to feel small. She wanted Brooke to see she could take something too. She wanted the whole world to look at her and stop seeing the woman they could leave behind. Dominic said nothing. Harper turned back to him. She told him that is not why she is staying. His throat moved. He asked why then. She walked to him slowly. She said because when she sat at his desk, nobody told her to calm down. They gave her reports. When she spoke in that boardroom, men who would have dismissed her had to listen because she was right. When Caruso tried to use her old life against her, she watched him realize there was nothing left there strong enough to pull her back. Dominic's eyes burned into hers. He asked if it was because of him too. Harper stopped close enough to touch him. She said yes, because of him too. The admission changed his face more than the torn papers had. He stated he was not a good man. She said she knew. He warned he would not become one because she stays. She said she was not asking him to become harmless. His mouth tightened. He asked what she was asking. Harper reached up and slid her hand beneath the open collar of his shirt, resting her fingers against the pulse at his throat. It was fast. That pleased her more than it should have. She said she was asking him to stop mistaking protection for control. She was asking for the chair beside his, not a room upstairs. She was asking him to tell her the truth before it became a crisis. She was asking him to remember that she is not collateral damage. Dominic's hand closed around her wrist. Not to remove it, but to hold it there. He asked what she was then. Harper looked up at him. She said his partner. The word entered the room and stayed. Dominic's control cracked. Not violently, not completely. Just enough for Harper to see the man beneath the armor. Exhausted and dangerous and terrified in a way he would rather kill than confess. He muttered, "God help this city." Harper's mouth curved. She said New Orleans had its chance. He pulled her to him. The kiss was different from the one in the SUV that had been hunger, shock, gasoline thrown on a fire. This was slower and more devastating. A vow without witnesses. A surrender neither of them would call surrender. His hand slid to the back of her neck. Hers curled into his shirt. The folder lay open on the desk behind them, empty of any future where Harper walked away clean. A knock sounded at the door. Dominic broke the kiss with a curse under his breath. Harper laughed softly against his chest. She said his empire had terrible timing. He agreed it always has. She said, "Then let us not keep it waiting." He looked down at her. The darkness in his eyes had not softened. It had made room. Together they walked into the conference room. The board was already assembled. Enzo stood near the wall with his arm in a sling. Miles sat at the far end, pale but present, a stack of Caruso peace terms arranged before him. Every man rose when Dominic entered. Then they saw Harper beside him. Some looked surprised. Some looked cautious. Patrick Voss looked annoyed. Dominic reached the head of the table. The chair to his right remained empty. For one suspended moment, nobody moved. Then Harper walked to it and sat down. Miles pushed the folder toward her. Across the top in heavy black letters were the words Caruso Peace Terms. Harper opened the file. Temporary territorial boundaries, shared inspection windows, dock access restrictions, payment channels disguised as vendor settlements. 3 clauses too vague to be accidental. She read in silence. Dominic sat beside her waiting. The room waited with him. Finally, Patrick Voss cleared his throat. He stated those terms had already been reviewed. Harper turned a page. She said reviewed is not the same as understood. Patrick's face reddened. Dominic leaned back. Harper tapped one clause with her fingernail. She explained Caruso was not asking for peace. He was asking for visibility. The inspection language gave him a legal excuse to slow cargo twice a month. The vendor settlement clause let him reintroduce Bayline under a different name. And the boundary line near the rail spur was not about territory. It was about access. Miles leaned forward. He said she is right. Enzo smiled faintly. Patrick shut his mouth. Dominic looked at Harper. He asked what she suggested. She picked up a pen, the same kind Miles had placed before her in the warehouse. This time her hand did not shake. She said they rewrite it. Outside, thunder rolled across the Mississippi. The city beyond the walls kept moving. Street cars rattled. Tourists drank beneath balconies. Brides walked into dress shops, believing love was the most dangerous thing they would ever choose. Inside the Vale estate, Harper drew a line through Caruso's first clause and began again. Dominic watched her write, not like a man watching something he owned, like a man watching something he had unleashed. Harper felt the weight of the ring on her finger, the pen in her hand, and the room waiting for her next word. For the first time in her life, the mess did not frighten her. For the first time, she was not there to clean it up. She was there to decide what survived.